My name is Courtney Soto, and this is a video presentation for the course Exercise and Sport-Related Nutrition at UT Still University. For this video, we were asked to answer a client question that is nutritionally related. However, I'm not currently working right now, so I'm going to answer a question that I've kind of always wondered myself, which is how does nutrition different between sports such as power and endurance sports? So regardless if you are a professional athlete, a sedentary individual who works in an office all day, or someone who just exercises for health and fitness, we all have basic nutritional needs. The main difference is the amount of food which we consume. A power athlete will consume a different number of calories compared to a dancer or swimmer or an endurance athlete. The intensity of the program will also make some athletes have a higher caloric intake and fluid requirement. Even more, depending on the type of sport the athlete participates in, will determine their nutritional diet. Nutrition has never been a one-size-fits-all program. It's tailored to the individual's need, but can also be determined based off of their body size. For example, an athlete who participates in strength and power tends to be a little bit larger and more muscular, which requires a larger caloric intake, while an endurance-based athlete carries less body fat and is leaner, which requires them to be strict on their intake and have a lesser caloric intake. According to Holloway and Sprite in 2011, over the last century, athletes are increasing in their size and their competitive natures, which is leading to nutritional strategies and specific decision-making regarding their dietary interventions for improving muscle mass and performance. Nutritional diets are known to be influenced by several factors such as religious beliefs, convenience, price, food availability, and can even be influenced by coaches, other athletes, and the sport for which they're participating in. In 2009, the American College of Sports Medicine issued a joint statement declaring that carbohydrate maintain blood glucose levels during exercise and replace muscle glycogen, but the amount of carbohydrates in which are consumed per athlete is just dependent on their total daily energy expenditure, the type of sport for which they're playing, the sex, and nutritional conditions of their environment. They continue by adding that the recommended protein intakes are generally met through a well-balanced diet without the use of a protein or amino supplement, and fat intake should stay between the range of 20% to 35% of total energy intake. During most of the training season, adequate energy must be consumed to support the training volume and intensity. For athletes who train for power, they complete 9 to 14 sessions per week and can last anywhere between 30 minutes to 3 hours and include resistance training, plyometric, and neuromuscular training several times a week. They also compete in complete training periodization, which in 2011, Stellingwerf, Morgan, and Burke define as purposeful sequencing of different training units, such as micro and macro training cycles and sessions. This allows the athlete to attain a desired psychological readiness for optimum on-demand performance. Stellingwerf and colleagues determined that female power athletes typically seem to have a lower energy intake per kilogram of body weight compared to male athletes, but it could be believed because they're either underreporting in their nutritional surveys or they have a lower energy requirement due to lower training volumes and intensities as compared to their male counterparts. Depending on the athlete's training volume and intensity, Stellingwerf and colleagues recommend that high carbohydrate diet of 6 to 12 grams per kilogram of body weight within a day, with females being on the lower end and the males being on the higher end, is recommended to maintain immune function. Recovery of glycogen storage. Stellingwerf and colleagues state, as referenced by Bergstrom and colleagues back in 1967, that a high carbohydrate diet can lead to augmented glycogen stores, which delay in exhaustion when compared to a low-carb diet. This allows for power athletes to have a better recovery. According to Stellingwerf and colleagues, a few studies have examined protein requirements for power athletes, where most of the recommendations have been made for athletes for either pure strength or pure endurance. Although the daily protein requirement are probably based on the quantity and quality of the power athletes' training rather than the specific sport for which they're participating in. But despite the lack of evidence and lack of studies for protein requirements, Stellingwerff and colleagues claim that there's a strong backing to suggest that timing, the type of amount of protein consumed that day, along with the relation of exercise session, increases protein synthesis to optimize post-recovery. Although a majority of dietary fuel for power sports comes from carbohydrates, fats provide a vital fuel source for training. Dietary fats aid in absorption of fat-soluble vitamins and provide a layer for hormone synthesis. According to Stellingwerff and colleagues, this helps skeletal muscle stores nearly the energy equivalent to glycogen in the form of intramuscular triglycerides, which is a sustainable fuel source for prolonged intense exercise. Endurance sports are becoming more popular, and more people are starting to run half marathons, marathons, ultramarathons, Ironmans, and even half Ironmans, which can last anywhere between 2 hours and 17 hours for more elite endurance athletes. Because a larger distance is covered in endurance athletes at higher speeds, there is a burden placed on the glycogen repletion and hydration. According to Ukentrop in 2011, muscle glycogen and blood glucose are most important substrates in muscle contraction. During prolonged exercise, such as endurance sports, fatigue is also associated with muscle glycogen depletion and a reduction in blood glucose concentration, with repairs performance. Adding that dehydration from sweat loss also impairs performance. Ukentrop states that sweat loss occurs during endurance sports because there is a need to disperse the heat that is generated during exercise, causing dehydration, adding to fatigue. Therefore, a major nutritional challenge for endurance athletes is to prevent dehydration. In order for dehydration, endurance athletes should begin hydrating approximately 4 hours before their sport begins. Ukentrop suggests that athletes who participate in hydrating prior to exercise improves their thermoregulation and exercise performance, especially in the heat. Carbohydrate intake 3 to 4 hours prior to exercise can have positive effects on exercise performance. However, Ukentrop believes that consuming carbohydrates 30 to 60 minutes before exercise may have an adverse effect on performance. This is because glucose ingestion in the hour before exercise can result in hyperglycemia and hyperinsulinemia, followed by a decline in blood glucose 15 to 30 minutes after the onset of exercise. However, during exercise, Ukentrop claims that the ingestion of carbohydrates can improve high-intensity performance.